The Chicago Bears just played the Green Bay Packers 2 weeks ago, but Saturday night's rematch will look a lot different thanks to some major injuries on both sides.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thank you for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On the show today, we're going to go through the really important key injuries for both sides that are going to affect this matchup and make it look quite a bit different than what we saw in the first game between these two teams just 2 weeks ago. We'll start with the Bears missing wide receivers Odunze and Luther Burden and how that's going to change what Ben Johnson wants to do on offense. Plus, Cole Kmet is questionable for the game, and so is DeAndre Swift. So the Bears offense definitely getting more injured, but also getting a little bit healthier on the other side. We'll talk about the potential return of Tremaine Edmonds. Then we turn our attention to the Packers' injuries, where obviously we know Micah Parsons is out and on injured reserve now, but they also have a handful of other really important starters listed as questionable for this game. And whether or not they play could go a really long way towards deciding who wins and who doesn't. We'll wrap up with the latest from the Bears stadium talk, now threatening northern Indiana as a potential spot, with Chicago and Arlington Heights still in the back burner, but maybe the state government not necessarily giving them as much as they'd like. And now it's a big multi-state battle in addition to a multi-city battle. But we start with the Chicago Bears, who we know will be missing in action, and then we can get to the guys that, well, we're not sure whether they're going to play on Sunday or not. The big injury news it came out on Thursday, but for entering Saturday's game is going to be the lack of wide receivers, lack of healthy wide receivers for Caleb Williams to be throwing to on Sunday, because that Bears final injury report on Thursday confirmed that Luther Burden and Odunze would be out with injuries. Linebacker Eamon Ogbongbemiga is also going to be out, but that could end up being less of a big deal because you've got Tremaine Edmonds questionable to return off of injured reserve. We'll talk about him in a minute here, but also DeAndre Swift questionable and Cole Kmet questionable for this game. And that starts to stack up quickly there when we talk about Bears weapons. And they missed Odunze last week, but DJ Moore and Luther Burden and Kmet and Loveland, they were able to make up for it pretty well, pretty consistently across that game. But now you take out Luther Burden and maybe you take out another one in Cole Kmet. I mean, we'll see how things go on Saturday, because even when we thought injured Bears were going to play, we thought Odunze was going to play, he tweaked something during warmups, he's out. A few weeks ago, we thought Kyler Gordon was going to play. He tweaked something during warmups, he's out. So even though Cole Kmet publicly said he is planning to play on Saturday, there's a certain aspect of needing to see it to believe it a little bit by the time that he actually warms up and gets on the field, not because of anything about Cole Kmet, but just because of the recent Chicago Bears track record here of injuries not being as reliable as you thought. But when Ben Johnson's going to go out there with a wide receiving core of DJ Moore, number 1, Olamide Zaccheaus, probably number 2 then, Devin Duvernay, number 3, and undrafted rookie free agent Ja'Day Walker would be your new number 4. I fully expect him to call up at least one wide receiver from the practice squad, either Maurice Alexander, who Ben brought over from the Lions, or J.P. Richardson, who was an undrafted free agent this year out of TCU. But any of those guys that get called up, they're mostly going to be there to help out on special teams a little bit more, and I wouldn't expect a practice squad guy to be catching a lot of passes from Caleb Williams, specifically in this game against the Packers. But you feel a lot less confident in your offense moving the ball consistently against Green Bay, throwing mostly to Zaccheaus and Duvernay with DJ Moore instead of Odunze and Luther Burden, who have been two of the most dynamic weapons the Chicago Bears have had all season. It helps that you don't have to account for Micah Parsons on the other side, and we'll talk about that in a minute here about how the Packers injuries changed the Bears matchups. But I think from Ben Johnson's perspective offensively, if I go in saying, hey, I'm short at wide receiver, the obvious response here is to load up at tight end and say, okay, we're going to see a lot of Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland. Now, again, Kmet is potentially not 100% as he's limited at practice all week with what is listed as ankle and knee injuries. I guess he was a full participant on Thursday, but he's not going to necessarily be 100%, but he'll be as healthy, presumably, as you could hope for or expect this late in the season. And I expect it's going to be a heavy usage for both of those guys. I think you're going to see the Bears be unafraid to load up the line of scrimmage, and they'll go 3 tight end sets. They've been doing that more and more every single week with either Theo Benedict as that 6 offensive lineman lined up at tight end, or with Durham Smythe, who's sometimes lined up at a fullback position. But I think you'll also see 2 tight end sets where Colston Loveland's just a wide receiver, where you come out with DJ Moore and Colston Loveland to the left, Olamide Zaccheaus to the right, and then Cole Kmet on the line of scrimmage as a tight end, and they'll run their regular, quote-unquote, 3 wide receiver play just with a tight end lined up as one of those wide receivers. So I don't think it completely derails everything Ben Johnson wants to do on offense. I mean, even in recent weeks, we've seen a player like Devin Duvernay have to play a little bit more, and he had a really nice catch in a tough situation, that scramble drill type of play when Caleb's outside of the pocket and everybody's got to break from their original routes and just find a way to get open, and Caleb connected with him on one of those downfield. So I think there's enough confidence in Ben Johnson as a play caller and an offensive scheme mastermind to kind of say, hey, the route concepts themselves can get the players open, even if maybe you don't trust Duvernay to win one-on-one and create his own separation, but if you run the right routes against the right opposing coverages, Packers play a lot of soft zone, and so if you have a couple of routes that take defenders away and then Devin Duvernay fills in that space where those defenders just vacated, right? He doesn't have to be the world's most precise route runner or the best separator in the world for Caleb to still have an open receiver to throw to. Like it does put a lot on Ben Johnson's shoulders, but that's what he's here for. And I expect they'll be able to operate not 100% of the offensive playbook that Ben Johnson might want to, but enough that it shouldn't drastically derail what Ben Johnson wants to do. I think the bigger obstacle here is like yards after catch. We've seen Zaccheaus be pretty limited in that regard. Devin Duvernay's never been a special receiver. I mean, he's good with the ball in his hands as a return man, but on offense, we've never seen him be that kind of guy, whereas like Luther Burden has been great after the catch. And even Odunze, when he does hold on to the ball, has made some nice plays after the catch. The Bears are going to be missing some of those hidden yards there. Like I think Ben Johnson can get open receivers and Caleb Williams can get them the ball, but those 5-yard completions are going to be 6-yard completions instead of catch it at 5 and turn up field for 8 or 9, right? Like you're just not going to get as many of those sort of extra yards, so you're going to have to earn it just a little bit more as they go down the field, and that's going to be interesting to watch. I find myself less concerned about Kmet or Swift missing the game. They're questionable, but they've been on the injury report a lot the last couple of weeks, so I'm optimistic that they will continue to play at the level that they have been playing at in recent games. But we should touch briefly on the defense, where Tremaine Edmonds has been designated to return from injured reserve and not only was limited at practice Wednesday and Tuesday, but then a full participant in practice Thursday suggests that he should be good to go for Saturday and that he can be activated and start next to TJ Edwards and have almost a fully healthy linebacking core. I mean, Ogbongbemiga's out, but he's normally your about 5th on the depth chart right now. So in theory, you could have pretty much full strength linebackers, but I'm again just a little bit worried about something happening in pregame warmups, just because that's now 2 weeks in a row where injured player doesn't come back. But at least I think as it stands right now with the absences of, Burden and Rome Odunze, Ben Johnson's had all week to prepare for those guys not being out. It's not like last week against the Browns where they spent all week thinking they'd have Odunze and then last minute before the game, he's out. Or 2 weeks ago, they spent all week thinking they'd have Kyler Gordon and then last minute before the game, he's out. And whatever game plan you had spent all week working on now all of a sudden changes at the last minute. I hope that this current injury situation has given them a little bit more concrete action to prepare for, as opposed to like you think Rome or Luther's going to play and then they're out again at the very last minute. On the flip side, though, it's going to be tougher to figure out for the Packers from a Bears perspective because you don't know whether running back Josh Jacobs is going to play, wide receiver Christian Watson's going to play, safety Evan Williams is going to play, a bunch of injured Packers that are still up in the air. But for sure Micah Parsons will not be out there, and that changes so much for the Chicago Bears. So we'll take a look at just how important these Packers injuries will be for what the Bears do to attack Green Bay next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Gametime. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets to an event like that is always the hard part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, because it finally gives fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. I'm not messing with you. I've used the Gametime app to get World Cup tickets. I'm going to see a match in Atlanta in June between Spain and Saudi Arabia, and I got my tickets in the Gametime app because you can watch how the prices change in real time. You can see when great seats open up and buy the tickets the moment they hit the app. It just put the power back in my hands. And I love the all-in pricing, so there aren't any last-minute fees that are added at checkout. No surprises, and you can see your view from your seat before you buy your ticket. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets or any other match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Gametime. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. The Bears' injuries are significant. The Packers' injury list is longer right now of new injuries. And, I think when you think about all the injuries that both teams have had this season and the guys that are like out long term, these two teams are probably pretty equally banged up. But the Packers' injuries are newer to them. And so I think the Packers will be more different this week than the Bears are this week. Considering first game without Micah Parsons is kind of the big one that we'll talk about. But briefly to kind of go through this Packers laundry list of an injury report. I mean, I'm not going to count them all, but there's over 20 guys listed on this report coming out of Thursday's practice. They have 10 guys who are questionable and 3 guys who are listed as out. The 3 guys listed as out are not important or that surprising, but more important for us from a Bears perspective, questionable players to note in this game. Running back Josh Jacobs did not participate in any of the 3 practices this week with a knee/ankle injury designation. You've got offensive lineman Zach Tom, the right tackle, did not participate in any of the 3 practices this week with a back/knee injury designation. Then you've got wide receiver Christian Watson, DNP on Tuesday, but limited Wednesday and Thursday with the chest/shoulder injury that sent him to the hospital in the middle of the Packers' last game. And then starting safety Evan Williams, DNP, all 3 days with a knee injury. And yet still, the Packers list all those guys as questionable. And there's maybe a little bit of gamesmanship there. I mean, I would think guys that didn't practice all week are probably closer to doubtful than questionable. But I understand Green Bay not wanting to rule anyone out if they have a chance to see how they warm up, see how things are on Saturday, and try and give it a go. I think having one fewer day this week makes it less likely that some of those guys are going to play. Like I expect, we don't have any, advanced medical information on the Packers here, but if you just look at the practice reports, Watson being limited 2 days this week makes it seem more likely that he'll be able to play 1 week after being hospitalized with a chest, shoulder, kind of upper chest injury in there from a big hit he took. But Josh Jacobs not practicing at all. I mean, I think he could play despite not practicing. He's a veteran who's been around for a couple seasons, but I would be worried if I were a Green Bay fan. And certainly same thing for safety Evan Williams, right? Really good young player for them, but doesn't practice all week. I think they're both capable of still taking the field without practice, but I think their presence or absence changes a ton for this game. We should start with Micah Parsons as to not, overlook or belabor. It's easy to kind of be like, well, he's on injured reserve, so it's sort of, almost second nature at this point. It's assumed yes, he's going to be out, so it doesn't feel as new or as fresh, but that changes so much of what the Bears are going to do on offense. When so much of the game plan against the Packers the first time was, we got to put a bunch of bodies on Micah Parsons or we got to run away from Micah Parsons. I mean, they were running to the right over and over again. And Micah Parsons isn't as strong in the running game, but still, they were not trying to go right at him all that much. And then in pass protection, the Bears were constantly chipping in with a tight end, having a running back release to that side just to get in his way if he's trying to go upfield around the outside. And so Green Bay did a good job of responding by saying, okay, if you're going to send all that attention to that same side where Micah Parsons is all the time, then we're just going to move Micah Parsons around. And you may remember two of Micah Parsons' best pressures. I don't know if they were both sacks, but he lined up against right guard Jonah Jackson a couple of times and beat him quickly and got right into Caleb Williams' face. And they're like, well, it's a lot harder to send help blocking, against a right guard there than it is a tackle on the edge. And you can't roll away from the middle when the middle is the middle. Like if he's on the left side, you can roll to the right. If he's on the right side, you can roll to the left. But if he's in the middle, you can't roll fully away from him. You're still going to have to block him and not let him chase down your quarterback, right? So there were just so many different ways where the Bears had to keep track of where number one was on the field at all times, and now they don't. And it's not to say that this Packers pass rush is going to be horrible without him, but it was considered a weakness on this team before they added Micah Parsons. I mean, you still got to respect Rashawn Gary, and Lucas Van Ness hasn't been anything special for them, but he's a first-round talent. Like he's flashed at times and can sneak up on you if you ignore it too much. It's a group that you feel a lot better about the Bears being able to block, but you can't just chalk it up and say, okay, pass rush, you don't got to worry about that whatsoever. But I think it does open up what Ben Johnson can do offensively quite a bit. And I think the same can be true with safety Evan Williams. If he doesn't go, I mean, he and Xavier McKinney are one of the best safety duos in the NFL. And if they have to go to a backup at that position, I assume Zane Anderson at this point, but we'll see. Like your confidence in attacking vertically definitely opens up a bit more. And it's a great combination of like Packers pass rush is lesser, so you'll have more time to throw. And if you're missing a safety, then you'll have less high quality coverage on the back end that if you have that time to throw, then receivers can get downfield and have more space to make plays. Like I like the idea of like that combination being able to help open things up for the Bears offense. I imagine they'll still put Xavier McKinney back there enough to try and take away some of that deep game. And I imagine the Packers will also blitz a bit more to try and get after Caleb Williams a little bit and keep him in the pocket and force him to have to beat them with his arm. But I still think it's a much more favorable matchup this way. And it makes the Packers defense a lot less flexible to be able to do whatever they want, right? It's kind of the inverse of what the Bears were experiencing. Where on offense, the Bears were more limited because they had to deal with those weapons on Green Bay. Now with Green Bay not having those defensive weapons, or potentially not with Evan Williams, now Green Bay has to be more limited because when they have a great four-man rush, they can do whatever they want in coverage. When they have good safeties, you can do a lot of different things in coverage. But if you have a worse pass rush and maybe worse safeties, you feel less confident in the variety of what you can do on defense, which then makes it easier for the Bears to want to be able to do more of what they want to do on offense. So there's really some deep ripple effects here of the potential injuries. Certainly the same thing is true on offense on the other side where, if the Packers don't have Josh Jacobs, that running game really doesn't concern me all that much. And it's not to say that like their backup Emmanuel Wilson is terrible, but like he's not averaging 4 yards per carry this season. And especially if the right tackle Zach Tom is still hurt, like they just haven't been a great running team with Josh Jacobs. And you take away Josh Jacobs, and now they're really going to be, I think, hurting to create plays on the ground and balance out their offense a little bit with Jordan Love. I think Christian Watson's presence or absence changes what Dennis Allen will do from a coverage perspective quite a bit. Last week, Christian Watson's speed burned the Bears twice on big touchdowns, right? The slant route that he broke over the middle against C.J. Gardner-Johnson, where it was just man coverage, and he just outran him to the end zone. And then the other one was a deep shot downfield, and I get that one and the Bo Melton touchdown mixed up. But like man coverage, they're not able to turn and run with Christian Watson. And so if Watson's out there, I'd like to see a lot more zone. I mean, the Bears got burned on man coverage blitzes over and over against Green Bay the first time. They can't keep up with Christian Watson in man coverage, especially without enough help from deep safeties if you're blitzing and you can't have as many guys back there, right? But if Watson doesn't play, then maybe you can stick in man coverage a little bit more. Like, I don't want to just write off Romeo Doubs or Jaden Reed or Tavion Wicks or even Matthew Golden. Like, they can still do some damage to you in man coverage. Heck, Bo Melton caught a big touchdown against the Bears in the first game. Like, you can't just chalk that up and say, hey, you're good, but you're just less scared, right? The risk is a little bit lower in man coverage against those guys than Christian Watson. But if Watson plays, I'd like to see a little bit more zone. I'd like to see them pass that off and not try and have these guys turn and run with them because they just can't keep up with that kind of speed. So it's going to be a huge factor in this game. I still think even if all those questionable Packers play, I don't think that's an excuse for the Bears to lose and say, oh, well, the Bears were more banged up or whatever. Like, they're missing Micah Parsons on the other side. The Bears should still be able to win either way and need to prove that in this game. But it'll be a heck of a lot easier if those guys are out, and it'll be a lot more challenging if those guys are in. But it's going to be really fun to break down for you. Afterward, we're going to be live on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel with the Bears Squad Show breaking it down, and then we'll have, our regular normal Monday podcast coming up after that. But before we get to the Packers game, I want to talk about the bombshell that Kevin Warren dropped. Since they dropped it right before the Packers game, we'll talk about it then, right before the Packers game, with no longer sights fully set on Arlington Heights and Bears exploring their options, and now they're playing a game of chicken with the Illinois state government and flirting on the side with their side piece, Indiana, there. We'll talk about what's going on here and how real this Indiana interest might be. And I don't know, everyone likes to have really strong opinions on how well Kevin Warren is or isn't handling the situation. I'm not sure that we have enough information on the outside to have definitive takes there, but we'll try and piece together what's going on here and what it might mean for the future of the Chicago Bears stadium plans. That's next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, right? You got college football bowl games, big basketball matchups, and of course, playoff pushes for teams like the Bears and Packers. It's all happening all at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy sports. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and easy. So you could pick more or less on Caleb Williams' passing yards, DeAndre Swift's rushing yards, DJ Moore's passing yards, you name it, they've got it in the PrizePicks app. And if you get your picks right, you're going to win big. And they make it quick and easy to play, so everything keeps flowing from the very start. You can make a lineup in less than 60 seconds. Download the PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Are we really going to see the Chicago Bears of Indiana, in parentheses, in quotation marks there? It feels wrong, right? It feels icky, and it feels, dare I say, like a little bit beneath the Chicago Bears to plop down in Northwest Indiana. If you're not from the area, Northwest Indiana has a bit of a reputation as not super nice looking and feeling area. Certainly, the Gary, Indiana area has some statistics. If you want to look up statistics about Gary, Indiana, that it will inform a lot. And I know that's not like, it's all sort of a big sprawling urban area there, but like there's a certain feeling, I think, from people in Chicago. There's a superiority complex of like, well, Chicago and along Lake Michigan is much better than Northwest Indiana there. So the Bears can't be seriously considering this. And yet, I do think they are. I don't think this is a bluff entirely. I mean, obviously, the Bears want to be in Illinois. Maybe we should back up slightly. Kevin Warren, the Bears team president, put out a letter to the fan base this week making this announcement. I'm not going to read through the whole thing because I can sit here and read to you for 5 minutes, but but more so, I'll just highlight the quick part about where things stand with the different stadium sites that they're looking at here. The letter read in part, he's talking about how this is important, this is high stakes, and the timetable is critical. But anyway, the part I'll start with is, quote, we have not received that sense of urgency or appreciation to date. We have been told directly by state leadership that our project will not be a priority in 2026, despite the benefits it'll bring to Illinois. Consequently, in addition to Arlington Park, we need to expand our search and critically evaluate opportunities throughout the wider Chicagoland region, including Northwest Indiana. This is not about leverage. We spent years trying to build a new home in Cook County. We invested significant time and resources evaluating multiple sites and rationally decided on Arlington Heights, et cetera, et cetera. They must keep every credible pathway open to deliver that future. So I guess, first of all, when you say it's not leverage, it's definitely leverage. I think what he means, though, is it's not purely just leverage. Like, we're not bluffing here. There is real interest in Indiana, but that real interest in Indiana, everyone knows if it were up to the Bears, like the Bears don't want to go to Indiana. They've said all along, like, no, we want to be either in Chicago or in Arlington Heights, and they've gone back and forth between the two of them. They add Indiana into the mix, yes, in large part for leverage, but I do think Indiana has a real play here. I think it will take a lot of convincing. Like, I think it's the Bears' third choice, and so Indiana's really going to have to sell them on it, but like the Bears are looking for state aid, right? Looking for some amount of, it's not really direct financial aid. Like the Bears like to talk about how they're not asking for the state of Illinois to pay for the stadium, but what they are asking the state of Illinois to do is pay for the roads and the infrastructure around the stadium, the public roadways, which, okay, we're not going to have the whole stadium politics debate here, but they're also asking for property tax freezes on the property, essentially saying like, we will pay for the stadium, but like, we don't want to pay property taxes on it, and we don't want to have to pay for the roads and all the infrastructure around it. Like, can you help us out with that? And the state of Illinois says, no, we've got 100 other things in our budget that we need to manage. And again, I'm not going to go into the intricacies of Illinois state politics, but mostly saying like, hey, taxpayers in Illinois, this is not a big priority for them to watch us pay for the stadium. So it's not going to be our priority right now to help not pay for the stadium, right? But to put money towards and lose some revenue by not getting property taxes from the stadium, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's to give whatever category you want to put them in, tax breaks or tax incentives or whatever it is. Like the state of Illinois says, we're not in a position to do that right now. You're a big boy billionaire organization. You pay for it yourself. And so Kevin Warren says, well, we could go over to Northwest Indiana, and the state government there and the governor there might be more willing to give us those things we're looking for. Might be more willing to pay for the infrastructure. Might be more willing to, waive property taxes on the site. And Kevin Warren points to like, hey, when you build a stadium, it creates a bunch of jobs. It brings a bunch of money to the local economy, right? Like it would be essentially, he's asking the state to invest that money, and in return, you get all of the economic benefits of a new Bears stadium that's not only going to host Bears games, but potentially a Super Bowl, potentially, they've talked about concerts and other big events can be at that stadium. So it's not just 8 or 9 Sundays every season that they're hosting Bears games, but they're anticipating, consistent multi-use complex that then the state of Illinois will generate tourism dollars and sales tax from all the people that visit there. And they're saying, listen, if Indiana is willing to pay us in terms of property taxes and infrastructure, then they will reap the financial benefits. And sorry, Illinois, like you're going to miss out on it. And Illinois is sitting there saying, you don't actually want to go to Indiana. Like Indiana might still offer you that stuff, but like it's sort of a staring contest of fine, go to Indiana almost, right? It's kind of you're not actually going to abandon the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. The bad PR that the Chicago Bears would take for quote unquote abandoning or leaving Illinois and going into Northwest Indiana. Plus, again, we talk about like reputationally, Northwest Indiana, not the best place to reputationally enjoy. But I wonder if the Bears have some or if the state of Illinois also has some more leverage here than we realize in terms of like, say the Bears built their stadium in Northwest Indiana, in that sort of like east, they call it technically like East Chicago, even though it's across the border. But say they're just across the border in Indiana, kind of there's a Hard Rock Casino over there, like kind of in that area around 94. If the Bears are playing there, people are still going to fly into Chicago, stay at Chicago hotels, and dine at Chicago restaurants to then go to the game in Indiana. Like, I don't think the Gary, Indiana airport is going to take all of the Chicago air traffic for Bears games. And I don't think people are going to fly into South Bend or Fort Wayne or Indianapolis and drive all the way up to Gary and basically drive all the way up to Chicago when they could just fly into Chicago and stay in Chicago and enjoy Chicago. So I can't help but wonder if Illinois feels like, hey, build in Indiana, that's fine. Yeah, we're not going to get those direct jobs necessarily of like the stadium staffers, although I bet a lot of the people that would work there could still live in the Illinois side of the border and then drive across to Indiana to actually work there. So I think Chicago is in a little bit of a better leverage play than maybe the Bears want you to think. But it's going to be really fascinating to see how this plays out, because the Bears are feeling a little bit of a time crunch. I think Illinois is looking at this and saying, hey, this Bears new stadium isn't necessarily a need, right? The Soldier Field still works. It's not great, sure, but it's not urgent from the state's perspective. Soldier Field will keep working for a while. The Bears want it so they can host events, host a Super Bowl, make more money. And Illinois says, we're not in the business right now of helping you make more money. We got bigger fish to fry. So if you want to build a new stadium to make more money, then that's on you guys. But then is Indiana willing to play ball? And then all of a sudden, how willing is the state government to let the Chicago Bears technically be located in Indiana? I mean, we see the Dallas Cowboys in Arlington, still Texas, but far away. We see the Washington Commanders, I think, are in Maryland. Like they're across, there are plenty of football teams that aren't exactly where they claim to be and are a little bit farther away. So I don't think it's going to be like a deal breaker that Chicago could go in Indiana and not going to ruin them as the Chicago Bears. But I think we'd all hate it a little bit, right? I think we would all prefer they stay in Illinois. So Kevin Warren is banking on public sentiment saying, hey, no, keep our Bears in Illinois. Don't let them go to Indiana. That's kind of the last ditch effort here to see if they can get more from the state. We'll keep checking in on it every once in a while when we get big announcements like this. I don't like to get too caught up in, it's as close to politics as we'll ever get, I guess, on this show. But hopefully, I don't think there's anything particularly partisan. I mean, I guess there is a party in power, but it's not necessarily partisan. Anyway, we're not talking partisan politics here. We're talking Chicago Bears football on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today, and hopefully every single day. If you are an everydayer, you might want to join the Everydayer Club here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Take your listening up a level and go ad-free. If you join the Everydayer Club today, you'll get Locked On Bears with no interruptions, plus access to a members-only Discord and much more. It's all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. You can go to lockedonbears.supercast.com to get the ad-free show, or you can keep listening the way you have. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to put it behind a paywall or anything. It's just an extra option if you want to go ad-free and support the show. But we'll still be back on Monday to break down whatever happens in Bears-Packers, the rematch. And in the meantime, I hope Locked On Bears makes it just a little bit easier for you to bear down.